Thank you, team. Good to see you. You can be seated. And as you are, man, I just want to welcome you. I want to welcome you here. For those of you attending in-house today, for those of you online, welcome to Crossroads. My name is Matt Manning. I'm the senior pastor here at Crossroads Church, and it's good to be back preaching here. The last 3 weeks I haven't been here. I don't know if you've noticed or not, but John, James, and Chris just did a fantastic job these last 3 weeks teaching and leading. And I don't know if you realize this or not, but we have such an incredible team of communicators here who can so clearly communicate God's word. And I'm so grateful for them. So blessed to have them here at Crossroads. Yeah, you can clap for them. They're awesome. Now, while I wasn't preaching here, actually during those 3 weeks, I actually got an opportunity, an invite to preach at Victory Iglesia. That's a church that we helped plant 2.5 years ago. It's a Spanish-speaking church for really kind of the Latino community here in our area, and they invited me to come speak. Now, before you have like grander visions that I like pulled off a sermon in Spanish, I didn't. It was translated, all right? And it was awesome. Pastor Saul was the one translating, and these hilarious moments broke out several times during the sermon where he would like struggle translating something that I had said, and then, kid you not, like 10, 12 people would holler what the word should be from the congregation, and it was like this like really just humorous moment, but it was so fun to be with them. They're 2.5 years old. They're over 200 people consistently at our community center. This fall, they're going to go to 2 services because of the growth. God is working in them, and don't forget to pray for them, all right? Be praying for Pastor Saul, his team, Victory Iglesia. They are doing really, really cool stuff. If you're new with us, I just want to say welcome to you. Seriously, I'm glad that you're here. My prayer is that you would be able to experience God today, that you would be able to experience His church, and that today when you leave, you would leave inspired, challenged, encouraged in your faith journey, wherever that may be. And if you're new with us, one of the things that you need to know is that here at Crossroads, we're all about serving people toward and connecting people to Jesus. We call that our mission here. And the way that we accomplish that, Michelle, we can put it on the screen for everybody to see. The way that we accomplish that mission is by expanding our kingdom impact. That is God's kingdom, not Crossroads Empire, but God's kingdom. We expand our impact in God's kingdom into our communities, that's locally, and beyond, think world, by being a multi-generational, listen, there are families that attend Crossroads every week where we have 3 generations of families sitting together worshiping God. We are a multi-generational church, a multi-ethnic church. We want to reflect our community, focused on making disciples of the next generation, our kids and our grandkids. Now, very intentionally and inherent in that statement is a focus on the rising generation. Listen, here at Crossroads, we love kids. We love families. We want to see families that are strong. We want to see families that are connected together. We want to see families that are encouraged. We want to see families that are thriving in this world. And so with another school year happening and beginning, we just thought, man, this would be a fantastic opportunity to, again, focus on, to remember, to talk about what it means to disciple the rising generation and how that works in the family of faith. And so if you were here last week, John got us off and got us started in Mark chapter 6, where we looked at this passage where Jesus brings the little children to himself and just how it speaks to the love that God has for kids in this world. The next 2 weeks, this week and next week, we're going to talk about what does it look like to disciple primarily in the home? What does it look like for us to carry this out in our homes? And then the following 2 weeks, we're going to talk about discipling kind of in the greater context of the church family. And here's the thing that I want to keep in front of us throughout the entirety of this series, that everyone in this church, that everyone who calls Crossroads home, that we are responsible for creating a culture or an environment that leads to the spiritual growth of the rising generation. That if you call Crossroads home, this is your responsibility. It's to create an environment where young people, the rising generation, has an opportunity to flourish in their spiritual growth. Whether you have kids or not, whether your kids are small and at home or big and gone from your home, that when it comes to helping the rising generation know and love Jesus and follow Jesus, that is all of our responsibility. We shoulder that together. It is part of the vision of this church. And so specifically, as we look at the home today, I want to invite you, if you have a Bible or a Bible app, to turn to Deuteronomy chapter 6, all right? Deuteronomy chapter 6. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. We're going to throw it all on the screen for you so that you can follow along with us, all right? Now, as you're turning there in your Bible, what I want you to do is I want you to picture or think of really just kind of a playground. You can choose any playground in America, but land yourself in the playground. And there in the playground, what you will inevitably see is, parents kind of milling around. Parents milling around jungle gyms and the monkey bars on the swing sets. And the parents are milling around, and the reason that they're milling around is to keep a watchful eye on their kids, right? To make sure that their kids are safe, that their kids, are playing nice with other kids, to make sure, nothing terrible happens to them. And despite the milling of parents around the playground, the inevitable eventually happens, doesn't it? A child gets hurt. Maybe it's because, she comes running off the second story of the playground and scrapes her knee, or maybe it's because two kids bump heads as they're playing tag, or maybe your son, gets a bruise because he was running up the slide and fell down. Whatever it is, eventually a child gets hurt. And in that moment, what is the first thing the child does? Instinctively, that child looks to mom, that child looks to dad to see what reaction this mishap will provoke. And typically on the playground, there's one of two responses of parents, right? The first response we'll call, the parachute parent. The parent looks horrified and shouts in a shrill voice, "Oh my goodness, sweetie, what have you done?" To which the child, now assuming he just only has 5 minutes left to live, begins to scream at the top of his lungs. Chaos ensues. Flight for life is called. Chaos is everywhere, right? We've all experienced that. But there's another response from a parent who, experiencing that same exact scenario on the playground with their kid, immediately and confidently looks at their child and says, "You're going to be okay. Shake it off. Keep playing. You'll be fine." And what happens next? Well, for most kids, the results of the parent's confidence and their assuring words move beyond the irritation and discomfort of, a minor injury and continue having fun on the playground without even shedding a tear. If you've ever been on a playground, you've seen this scenario play out time and time again, haven't you? Like, this story is told out over and over again. Now, as you ponder that scene, I want you to think about this. How great an influence must a parent possess that a child will emotionally interpret what has happened to him or her by merely gazing at mom and dad's response? Parents, listen. You are the greatest influence in your child's life. That you are the greatest influence in your child's life. And the reason that your influence is so huge is not just simply because of the connection that parents and kids share in the family, but also simply because the sheer amount of time that you spend with your children. That in Christian families, it's estimated that 1% of your child's life, while they live at home with you, will be spent in church. About 16% will be shared or will happen in terms of school or school activities. And 83% of their time will be spent at home. And even as those percentages change, as kids grow from little into adolescence, where friends and hobbies and sports become a bigger part of their world, what is interesting is that parents remain the most influential human being in the lives of their kids. In a recent study, graduating seniors were asked to identify relationships where they felt the most support, both in terms of quantity and quality. The list included friends at school, friends at church, coaches, other adults like youth leaders, teachers. However, the number one ranked group in terms of influence, both in terms of support of quality and quantity, was parents. This might be surprising to you because they never seem to show it, but your 18-year-old still considers you the most influential person in their life. Don't let that truth pass by too quickly. And so here's my question for us today. What if the influence you willed, the influence that you have in your child's life, what if it was used more than to simply help your kids with bumps and bruises, but more importantly was given to you to lead their spiritual development? What if the influence that you have in your child's life was used most to help them spiritually develop? That's what we want to talk about today. And the way that we're going to go about this is by looking at Deuteronomy chapter 6 as something that is commonly known as the Shema, all right? The Shema. It's referred to in Jewish culture. We find it in the Old Testament. It comes out of, like I said, Deuteronomy chapter 6, starting in verse 4, where Moses writes these words to the nation of Israel. He says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, that you shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart." These three verses in the Old Testament are known as the Shema. And when it comes to the Shema in Hebrew, that just means to hear. Shema just means to hear. It's actually the first word of verse 4. "Oh, hear Israel. Israel, listen up. Hear the words that I have to say." But historically, Shema has come to really refer to as a title or a way to refer to the most essential prayer in all of Judaism, found right here in Deuteronomy chapter 6. And if you know anything about Jewish culture, then you know that this prayer found here in Deuteronomy 6 is recited daily. In fact, it is the climactic moment of Yom Kippur, the most holy of all holy days in the Jewish calendar. That it is oftentimes said as the very last word as Jewish people pass from this life into the next. And if you've ever witnessed a Jewish person saying the Shema, praying the Shema, you'll notice that they cover their eyes like this in such a way to remove the rest of the world so that they can simply focus on the words that they are saying. That in Jewish culture, the Shema is the most essential of all prayers that we find in the Old Testament. But here's the deal. The prayer in Deuteronomy chapter 6 is not just a Jewish thing, it's a Christian thing. See, when Jesus was asked the greatest commandment by a lawyer came up and said, "Jesus, what is the greatest of all the commandments given in the Old Testament?" Jesus recites the Shema. He says it is to love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your mind. It is a prayer and a command that absolutely cuts to the heart of our faith, to acknowledge God's existence and to surrender to his authority. And Moses, writing here, says, put the Shema in your heart, memorize it, recall it, say it, but don't just say it, actually live it in your life. Make this who you are. The Shema is meant to rule every heart of every person who has ever lived. It's on the Mount Rushmore of verses in the Bible. It's a foundational verse in our faith, hugely important. There are few verses that get more play than Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 through 6. To which you might be thinking, Matt, all nice information, but what does any of this have to do with our kids? What does any of this have to do with the rising generation? Well, let's just look at the next verse. Following the Shema in verse 7, here's what Moses writes: "You shall teach them diligently to your children." Let's say this all together, right? Will you say it out loud with me? Let's just read it together. "You shall teach them diligently to your children." All right, one more time, as Gen Z would say, with some hype, all right? All right, let's do it. "You shall teach them diligently to your children." Now, inherently, deep-rooted into that statement in verse 7 is the reality that we as parents not only know the Shema, but that we're actually living it out in our lives so that when our children come to us, or as Moses says in verse 20, when your son comes to you in time and asks, what is the meaning of the testimonies and the statutes and the rules that the Lord our God has commanded you? In other words, mom and dad, who is this God and what kind of life does he have for me? When your son or daughter, when your child comes to you asking that question, Moses says, your response is this: "Then you shall say to your son, we were Pharaoh's slaves in Egypt. And the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand. And the Lord showed signs and wonders great and grievous against Egypt and against Pharaoh and all of his household before our eyes. And he brought us out from there that he might bring us in and give us the land that he swore to give to our fathers." That Moses says that when your child comes to you, you recount the faithfulness of God in your life. See, for the Hebrew person living during the time of Deuteronomy chapter 6, every single person hearing this for the first time was a child of a slave. For 400 years, the nation of Israel, the Hebrew people, had lived in slavery to Egypt under Pharaoh's thumb. Their parents, their grandparents, their great-grandparents, their great-great-grandparents, for generations upon generations, they had all been slaves in Egypt. And when all hope diminished, when everything seemed like it was lost, God shows up in the most miraculous of ways and not only delivers them out of slavery, but does so in such a miraculous and powerful and mighty way. And Moses says, when your kids come to you, you recount the faithfulness of God in your life just like you've seen it. Listen up. In this paragraph, following the great Shema, Moses summarizes the influence that you have as a parent. That in this paragraph, he is looking at you and he is saying, your parenting matters. What you do makes a difference. That your parenting matters more than a career, more than all of your successes, more than the money that you make, more than the items that you can provide to your children. Your parenting matters because God chose you to be the consistent, faithful instrument to bring about in your child's life the acknowledgement of God's existence and his goodness. Your parenting matters. What you do makes a difference. God chose you. Now, practically speaking, I think for most of us who have children, we will likely hit the parenting target that we aim for. The question is, are we aiming at the right target? See, at least according to Deuteronomy chapter 6, when it comes to parenting, parenting is not making sure that our kids grow up and have successful jobs. According to Deuteronomy chapter 6, successful parenting is not making sure that our kids grow up and get married. It's not making sure that our kids stay out of trouble. It's not, listen up, Christian parents, it's not that your child gets saved. Listen, every single one of us wants our children saved. We want our children to experience the love and grace of Jesus being their Lord and Savior. But can I be blunt for a moment? You can't save yourself, let alone your child. That's the work of the Holy Spirit. That according to Deuteronomy chapter 6, God says the goal of parenting is to create space, whether your kids are little or big, for them to have the opportunity to experience God and his goodness. You are a faithful instrument. Moses says, what you do matters. What you do matters. What you do makes a difference. And listen, some of you need to hear this. God did not make a mistake. God did not make a mistake by giving you this task. That he has called you to lead your child, that Jesus has brought you to himself or is bringing you to himself. That he is opening your eyes to his existence, to his grace, to his presence, to his goodness, to his rule, so that you in turn can show that to your child. That you are a tool in the Creator's hands. That you have been anointed, consecrated, ordained, blessed to be the irreplaceable instrument in the powerful hands of God to lead your kids spiritually. If you know me, one of my hobbies is woodworking. I love to take old things and to make them beautiful. It's a little bit like pastoring, only I find that people are kind of hard to help to restore, so I spend a lot of time woodworking. And when it comes to woodworking, there's a lot of tools that you can use in woodworking, but one that we all know is the sander. And the sander is a powerful tool, isn't it? I mean, depending on the type of paper that you put on it, you can either grind wood to sawdust or you can make something shine. And yet what we all know about a sander is that it can do absolutely nothing simply laying on a shelf. But if you take that sander that lays on the shelf and you put it in the hands of a craftsman, this tool transforms an old piece of furniture into something beautiful. See, whether you want to admit it or not, your child has some flaws. Your child has a concerning dilemma. Your child has a troublesome ability to look out at the world and to see beauty and signs and truth, and then has that troublesome ability to see the beauty, the signs, and the truth of this world and not see who they're pointing to. Time and time again, they fail to see the existence and glory of God. And at some point, your child is going to wonder. They're going to begin to wonder. They're going to begin to wonder why they have the rules that they have. And I'm not just talking like religious rules. I'm just talking like your regular rules of the house. They're going to wonder why they've been told to believe certain things. They're going to begin to wonder who put you in charge. And if you have a teenager, why that person who put you in charge put someone in charge who knows nothing about anything. Right? And sadly, most of us parents, when confronted with these kind of questions from our kids, we simply retort with a simple answer, I told you so. But Moses in this passage says, remember, what you do makes a difference. Your parenting matters. You are an instrument in the mighty hand of God. And in light of that truth, Moses says, make sure that every rule that you have is rooted in the existence of God's grace and his goodness. And when your child begins to question the rules, talk about a loving Savior and remind him that not only is he created by God, but he was also rescued by him as well. And when your child starts to have questions about right and wrong, don't just simply threaten her, but woo her with God's grace. And when your children are grown and out of the house, blow them away with God's patience and his mercy and his love. Talk about these things in your home. Pray about them when you're going to bed. Speak about them as you walk to the park and drive to school, when you're on vacation, when you're picking up your kids from a sleepover. Talk over and over about how God has willingly used his authority to our benefit in order that we might be rescued. Move away from simply exercising your authority and constantly point to God's authority, and then go a step further and share about his grace. See, in your child's life, you are the instrument that God uses to communicate and teach the most important thing that your child could ever know. The most important thing, the character, the love, the grace, and the plan of God for their lives. It's the essential thing that is to be crafted into every single person. And from this passage in Deuteronomy, Moses says that it's the essential task that is assigned to you as the parents, not the church. Listen, we have a fantastic family team here. John, Denise, Shelley, Damon, McKenna. They create programming that just blows my mind. Every week they work so hard to share the story of Jesus, to show the gospel and how it's relevant to their lives, not in some distant future, but right now in their lives today. They are amazing at what they do. And yet, they are not the primary disciplers of your kids. They are not the primary disciple maker of your kid. That belongs to you as a parent. It's not the church. It's not the government. It's not the schools. All of them are put in place to help and to support you as a parent, but none of those were designed to replace you, that you were chosen for this task, that you were chosen to lead your child spiritually, that you have been ordained by God to be the primary disciple maker in your child's life. What you do matters. And if you're here today in-house or listening to this online and you have a child, that's your calling. This is your calling, no matter what age your child is. And the reality of that truth is that this is a heavy weight, isn't it? This is heavy. I mean, I remember the first time that this dawned on me, that I felt the weight of this on my shoulders. My oldest son, Theo, who's 16 now, he was about 2 years old. And he was running around the house, and as I was watching him running around the house, he was mimicking me, and I thought, oh no, what has happened? Like suddenly, like there's a mini-me here. And it was in that moment that I realized that there couldn't be a more significant calling on my life than to create opportunity after opportunity for my children to see the goodness of God. It looks different for each of my 3 kids because of their personality and their ages and stages of life. But the reality is that calling never changes. That as long as you are alive, what you do as a parent matters. What you do makes a difference. The stakes are incredibly high, aren't they? And as we listen to this truth out of Deuteronomy chapter 6, there's this feeling of it being like an overwhelming burden, isn't it? And it will be that. It will be an overwhelming burden if you simply look to yourselves and think that I can do this on my own. It will overwhelm you. But it won't if you look up. Because when we look up, we begin to see and understand that we actually have a divine parent. One who calls himself Heavenly Father. And from Deuteronomy chapter 6, we come to see that the Shema isn't just for teaching our kids, but it's for teaching us too. That Deuteronomy chapter 6 teaches us that love begins with God. And that this love that God has is an all-embracing kind of love. It's a love that was bought with blood. See, the great reality of the Bible is that your Heavenly Father loved you so much that He sent His Son Jesus into this world to rescue you, to die on the cross for your sins, so that not only would your kids' hearts be transformed, that my kids' hearts would be transformed, that the kids of this church's hearts would be transformed, but so too that our hearts would be transformed as well. And when you put your faith in Jesus, and that word faith just means to trust or to put your weight in. An easy demonstration of faith is what you're all doing right now. You're sitting in a chair. You are putting your faith in, your trust in, your weight in that chair. You are trusting it to hold you. That's the idea with putting your faith in Jesus. It's you're surrendering your weight. You're surrendering all of your life, including your kids, to Him. I'm trusting Jesus with my life. And when we trust Jesus with our life, we realize that I don't have to invent anything. I don't have to invent anything. I don't have to carry anything. I don't have to perform in a specific kind of way. I don't have to carry the final burden of parenting my kids. All I'm invited to do is to take the outstretched hand of Jesus and to follow Him, one baby step at a time, experiencing the all-encompassing love of my Heavenly Father. If you've never taken the hand of Jesus and experienced the love of the Father, I want to invite you to maybe explore what that looks like. There's 2 ways for you to have that conversation if you're up for it. The first is you can simply text the name of Jesus to our text line, 720-513-1933. The other way is out in our lobby. When you walked in, you probably saw the wall with the big word Jesus on it. There's a couple of tables there. And at that wall, we're trying to create a space that is safe for you, with some friendly faces who are open and willing to have that conversation with you, regardless of where you're at in your spiritual journey. And so as we sing, you are free to kind of just make your way out there if that's what you want. And they'll be waiting for you just to have the conversation of what does it look like to have faith in, to put your trust in, your weight in Jesus for the entirety of your life. So as we close up today, I just want to remind you one more time. What you do as a parent matters. What you do makes a difference in the life of your child. Would you pray with me? Jesus, we come to you today, and we thank you. We thank you for the life that you lived, and that through your death that we can be reconciled to you, that we can feel and know and experience the love of our Heavenly Father. And so, Father, I pray today, I pray for the parents in the room and for the parents listening online. God, I pray for the single parents who are navigating navigating just the effects of divorce. God, I pray for the parents who are trying to navigate a blended family. I pray for the parents who grew up in dysfunctional homes and are trying the best that they can to create ones that are healthy. God, I pray for the parents today who have all of the right intentions and just sometimes lose sight, who sometimes become so discouraged by the voices in this world thinking that what they do doesn't matter. God, I pray today that you would remind us anew that what we do as parents matters, that what we do makes a difference. And I pray that you would help to renew our minds and our hearts and our soul and our strength, that we would love you with all that we have, and in doing so that we would feel your love. Renew in us a passion. Set us on fire for our kids, where we take the task that you've given us seriously to create every opportunity that we can for our kids to see you, experience you, and your goodness. God, we're thankful for your grace that you so often show us. We need it as parents. It's in your Son's name I pray. Amen. We come together as a body. And as we think through the Shema, we realize that it's only possible because we've been reconciled to our Heavenly Father. That through the death of Jesus, where his body was broken on the cross, for the forgiveness of your sins, where his blood was spilt so that you might have life, living a life that we could never live, dying a death that we deserved, that through it all we come and we know the love of God. And so today we remember and we celebrate by eating the bread together, and by drinking from the cup. In our worship, we're going to move to a time of singing. And as we sing these songs, some old, some brand new, I'm going to encourage you to stand and to sing out to our Lord and our Savior Jesus. If you need prayer during that time, you can make your way to the banner back here that says prayer. We'll pray for you there. Online, you can click the button. And if you want to have a conversation about Jesus and you're in the house, just to make your way to those tables back there, and we'll be ready to have the conversation with you. Would you stand with me? Let's sing.